The Graxian Empire sent the universal surrender ultimatum to Earth, expecting immediate compliance. Instead, their sensors detected thousands of satellite transmissions flooding back in hundreds of languages. Commander Varric watched as military threats mixed with civilian mockery and realized their invasion plan had already failed. Commander Varric stood before the holographic display, pointer in hand. His briefing to the flag officers presented conquest as simple mathematics. The equation never changed. Overwhelming force multiplied by psychological intimidation, divided by resistance equaled surrender. The Graxian strategy followed the same pattern for 17 planetary subjugations. Each operation proceeded with mechanical precision. Their playbook accounted for every variable except the one they now faced. Graxian intelligence reports portrayed humanity as a fractured species. They categorized human civilizations as tribal entities with primitive coordination capabilities. The assessment noted thousands of competing political structures and conflicting cultural values. Earth's technology appeared decades behind even their secondary systems. Standard models predicted complete infrastructure collapse at first show of force. The invasion plan called for orbital bombardment demonstration on uninhabited regions. Historical precedent showed species breaking when confronted with superior firepower. Civilizations either surrendered immediately or entered panic-induced negotiations. The timetable allowed precisely one planetary rotation for compliance assessment. Graxian Command expected capitulation documents within 24 hours. Their logistics teams already prepared occupation administration protocols. This doctrine contained a fatal flaw in its psychological modeling. The Graxians assumed all intelligent species shared their instinct for self-preservation through submission. They failed to account for what happens when fear triggers defiance instead of compliance. Their predictive algorithms couldn't process the concept of coordinated resistance emerging from apparent chaos. The mathematical certainty of their conquest formula began unraveling the moment their ultimatum transmission ended. The fleet moved into position above Earth's magnetosphere. Battle formations assumed standard invasion posture. Point defense systems activated on minimal alert status. Targeting solutions prioritized military installations and communication hubs. Graxian command vessels maintained high orbit, while destroyers descended to demonstration altitude. Crews performed final weapons checks with routine efficiency. Sensor operators monitored planetary response channels for the expected panic transmissions. They anticipated desperate pleas from world leaders begging for negotiation. Instead, they detected something their systems couldn't immediately categorize. Thousands of simultaneous signals flooded across multiple spectra. Military frequencies carried defiant declarations while civilian bands broadcast sarcastic commentary. The sheer volume of transmissions overloaded standard processing buffers. Command staff watched their displays with growing confusion. This wasn't how species reacted to imminent conquest. There were no surrender offers, no diplomatic overtures, no signs of social collapse. Instead, they witnessed what appeared to be global mobilization, hidden beneath apparent chaos. The mathematical certainty of their doctrine began showing its first critical failure. Varric studied the incoming data with professional curiosity. His tactical display showed human military assets activating in coordinated patterns. Civilian infrastructure began reconfiguring for defensive operations. The supposedly primitive satellite network demonstrated unexpected complexity. His invasion plan assumed they'd face disorganized resistance from isolated military units. The reality unfolding suggested something entirely different. Commander Vax opened the transmission channel to Earth with practiced efficiency. His voice carried the weight of 17 successful planetary subjugations. The surrender ultimatum represented perfected Graxian doctrine, clear, uncompromising, and designed to trigger immediate psychological collapse. He delivered the standardized imperial demand in flawless universal syntax. The message promised swift orbital bombardment for defiance and minimal occupation for compliance. Every syllable was calibrated to exploit species' survival instincts. Standard protocol allocated precisely 1 hour for planetary leadership to organize their response. Graxian psychological models predicted 30 minutes of stunned silence as governments scrambled to convene emergency sessions. They expected desperate negotiation attempts beginning around the 45-minute mark. Communication officers prepared to receive capitulation documents and surrender terms. The entire invasion timetable depended on this predictable response pattern. Instead, Thousands of transmissions began immediately across multiple communication spectra. Human response time measured in seconds, not minutes. Military channels broadcast defiance in dozens of languages simultaneously. Civilian networks erupted with sarcastic commentary and mocking memes. Amateur radio operators flooded emergency frequencies with chaotic transmissions. The sheer volume of signals overloaded Graxian communication buffers. Linguistic analysis software attempted to process the incoming data stream. The system crashed within 3 minutes of activation. It encountered hundreds of languages and thousands of dialects operating concurrently. Threat assessment algorithms failed to process sarcasm, irony, and cultural references. Military declarations arrived alongside comedy sketches and musical responses. The software couldn't distinguish genuine threats from cultural expression. Communication officers stared at their consoles in disbelief. Standard operating procedure offered no guidance for this scenario. They'd trained for silence, for panic, for desperate pleas, not for what sounded like global sarcasm mixed with coordinated military readiness. Signal intelligence teams reported impossible patterns. Some transmissions contained encrypted data hidden within apparent nonsense. Others broadcast false surrender offers from non-existent governments. The Graxian command ship experienced cascading system failures. Primary communication arrays overheated from signal overload. Secondary systems automatically engaged but quickly reached capacity. Officers switched to manual filtering but couldn't process the torrent of incoming data. They faced not the expected capitulation response but something far more dangerous. Chaotic, overwhelming defiance that masked strategic coordination. This was the first concrete indication their assumptions were fundamentally wrong. The perfect psychological weapon had triggered the exact opposite of its intended effect. Instead of fear and submission, humanity responded with what appeared to be organized chaos. The transmission volume alone suggested planetary-scale coordination capabilities their intelligence reports had completely missed. Every second of continued transmission provided more tactical data than their pre-invasion surveillance had gathered in months. Command staff began realizing they weren't dealing with a primitive species reacting to superior technology. They were facing a civilization that had apparently prepared for this exact scenario. The speed and complexity of the response indicated pre-existing protocols and training. What they'd assumed would be a simple surrender demand had become their first tactical defeat before any weapons fired. The invasion plan now required immediate recalibration against an opponent whose capabilities they'd clearly underestimated. Graxian sensors began mapping Earth's orbital environment with routine efficiency. They expected to find a handful of primitive military satellites and maybe some scientific platforms. Standard procedure called for neutralization of space-based assets before main invasion operations. Their targeting solutions assumed limited orbital infrastructure with clear military-civilian distinctions. The sensor returns revealed something entirely unexpected. Instead of sparse military hardware, they detected thousands of active satellites occupying multiple orbital planes. Weather monitoring systems, communication constellations, and scientific platforms formed a dense network around the planet. Commercial satellite clusters outnumbered identifiable military assets by 20 to 1. The sheer density created unexpected sensor interference patterns. Targeting officers struggled to categorize the orbital objects. Many satellites served dual civilian-military functions without clear designation. Weather satellites carried secondary reconnaissance capabilities. Communication arrays could be repurposed for battlefield coordination. Scientific platforms had unknown defensive potential. The targeting computers flagged thousands of objects as potential threats requiring individual assessment. This orbital diversity created inherent defensive advantages. The dense satellite field acted as natural camouflage for military movements. Graxian tracking systems experienced constant signal degradation from overlapping transmissions. Their weapons officers couldn't obtain clear firing solutions without risking collateral damage to neutral assets. Standard invasion protocols assumed clean orbital environments with clearly defined targets. The commercial satellite constellations proved particularly problematic. These networks operated with autonomous collision avoidance systems that interpreted Graxian vessels as orbital hazards. Hundreds of small satellites began maneuvering unpredictably, further complicating tracking solutions. The automated safety protocols created a constantly shifting orbital environment that defied conventional military analysis. Graxian intelligence reports had severely underestimated human space development. They'd cataloged only the largest military and scientific satellites, while missing the commercial revolution in space access. Their invasion plan contained no contingency for this level of orbital complexity. Standard clearing procedures would require weeks of work instead of the planned hours. Command staff watched their displays with growing concern. The orbital environment resembled a properly defended system rather than the primitive infrastructure they'd expected. Each satellite represented a potential sensor platform, weapons carrier, or communication node. The distributed nature of the network meant there was no central system to disable. They'd have to eliminate thousands of individual targets. This presented both tactical and strategic problems. Destroying civilian satellites violated multiple articles of interstellar law. The political fallout could affect their standing with neutral systems. Yet leaving the satellites operational created intelligence and security risks. Every active satellite could be monitoring fleet movements or coordinating resistance efforts. The resolution became increasingly clear. Earth's space infrastructure demonstrated capabilities far beyond intelligence predictions. The invasion plan required immediate revision to account for this unexpected orbital complexity. Standard clearing operations would be both politically problematic and tactically inefficient. They faced an opponent who had turned civilian space development into an unanticipated defensive. Advantaged Graxian Command began realizing they weren't dealing with technological inferiority but technological difference. Human space development had followed a distributed, commercial model rather than centralized military control. This approach created resilience through diversity in numbers. Their assumption of technological superiority began facing its first practical test in orbital space. Graxian translation systems activated with mechanical precision, designed for unified planetary responses. They expected coordinated diplomatic channels and formal military communications. Standard linguistic processing assumed hierarchical command structures and clear chains of authority. The software parsed languages through established diplomatic protocols and threat assessment matrices. Instead, they encountered hundreds of languages operating simultaneously across multiple transmission bands. Military ultimatums in Mandarin arrived alongside sarcastic memes in Spanish. Civil defense instructions in Arabic mixed with comedy sketches in Hindi. Cultural references and historical allusions flooded every available frequency. The translation algorithms struggled with linguistic nuances they'd never encountered. Threat assessment systems experienced critical failures. They couldn't process irony or sarcasm effectively. A sarcastic surrender offer from a comedy show registered as genuine capitulation. A serious military warning wrapped in cultural metaphor was dismissed as entertainment. The software flagged nursery rhymes as potential encryption and historical speeches as active threats. This linguistic chaos made strategic analysis impossible. Intelligence officers couldn't determine which transmissions represented actual authority. Every signal appeared equally urgent and equally questionable. They received false surrender offers from fictional governments and real tactical data disguised as cooking recipes. The noise-to-signal ratio reached unprecedented levels. Some transmissions contained deliberate misinformation designed to confuse. Amateur radio operators broadcast false coordinates for strategic targets. Satellite imagery experts altered sensor readings before retransmission. Linguistic experts created fake diplomatic channels that mirrored Graxian communication protocols. The deception operations leveraged cultural knowledge the invaders completely lacked. This chaotic communication environment provided perfect cover for actual military coordination. Real commands moved through cultural channels the Graxians dismissed as irrelevant. Military orders were passed as sports commentary and emergency alerts as weather reports. The very diversity that appeared to be humanity's weakness became its greatest defensive advantage. Graxian analysts watched their displays with growing frustration. They couldn't distinguish between actual military communications and cultural expression. A political speech might contain hidden mobilization orders. A music broadcast could be masking tactical data. Every transmission required full analysis, overwhelming their processing capabilities. The resolution became increasingly clear. Humanity's linguistic diversity created an impenetrable defensive screen. Their apparent disunity masked sophisticated coordination methods. The Graxians faced not a fractured species but a civilization using its complexity as a weapon. Every attempt to parse the communication stream revealed new layers of deception. Command staff began realizing their translation systems were fundamentally inadequate. They designed them for orderly civilizations with clear hierarchies. Human communication followed patterns their algorithms couldn't comprehend. The chaos wasn't evidence of primitive development but of advanced adaptive capability. This language barrier advantage forced complete reassessment of invasion tactics. Standard psychological operations proved useless against this communication environment. Their attempts to divide and conquer failed when they couldn't identify what needed dividing. The linguistic chaos provided humanity with perfect operational security. Graxian intelligence finally understood they weren't facing disorganization, but designed confusion. The hundreds of languages and cultural references formed a defensive network more effective than any electronic warfare system. Their translation failures became tactical vulnerabilities as human forces coordinated freely beneath the noise. The Graxian demonstration strike followed standard doctrine precisely. 3 destroyers targeted uninhabited desert regions with precision plasma weapons. The operation aimed to display overwhelming firepower without causing mass casualties. Standard psychological warfare protocols predicted immediate fear responses and surrender demands. Instead of triggering panic, the strikes produced immediate global analysis. Every nation's scientific community began studying the weapon signatures simultaneously. University laboratories redirected sensor arrays toward the impact sites. Military research facilities captured and cataloged every emission spectrum. Civilian astronomers tracked the weapon's trajectories through atmospheric entry. The plasma bursts revealed critical tactical information about Graxian technology. Scientists analyzed the energy signatures and determined weapon yield limitations. Engineers studied the impact patterns to understand targeting systems. Meteorologists tracked atmospheric disturbances to calculate recharge rates between shots. Each data point provided valuable intelligence about invasion capabilities. Civilian networks immediately shared all collected data across the planet. Amateur astronomers uploaded weapon trajectory calculations to public databases. University research teams published preliminary analysis within minutes of impact. Social media platforms became intelligence-sharing networks with global reach. The demonstration became the best possible intelligence gift humanity could have received. Military units worldwide began developing countermeasures based on the new data. Defense contractors adjusted shield modulation frequencies to match plasma weapon signatures. Engineers designed electromagnetic pulse weapons to target the observed firing systems. Tactical planners revised engagement protocols using the newly understood capabilities. The psychological operation fundamentally failed to achieve its objective. Instead of demonstrating invincibility, it revealed technological limitations. Humanity saw the controlled strikes as evidence of restraint rather than overwhelming power. The precision targeting suggested rules of engagement and possible ethical constraints. These perceptions reduced fear while increasing analytical response. Global unity emerged from the shared analysis effort. Nations that had been political rivals now shared weapon data freely. Scientific communities formed international research teams within hours. Military organizations established joint task forces to develop coordinated responses. The attack became a unifying event rather than a dividing one. Graxian Command watched the planetary response with growing concern. Their sensors detected massive data exchange across all communication bands. Instead of panic transmissions, they intercepted scientific analysis and technical discussions. The expected collapse of social order had been replaced with organized study and preparation. The demonstration strike revealed more about Graxian technology than months of surveillance could have provided. Human engineers reverse-engineered weapon cooling systems from thermal signatures. Tactical analysts calculated fleet logistics from firing patterns. The precise nature of the demonstration provided cleaner data than combat operations would have yielded. This intelligence windfall accelerated defense preparation timelines by weeks. Shield technology advancements occurred within hours instead of months. Weapon countermeasures were deployed before the Graxians could fire their next demonstration shot. The psychological operation had fundamentally backfired, providing the exact opposite of its intended effect. Command staff began realizing their doctrine contained fatal flaws when applied to humanity. Standard intimidation tactics only worked against species that responded predictably to fear. Humans processed threat through analysis and adaptation, rather than submission. The demonstration strike became a case study in miscalculated psychological warfare. The Graxian fleet operated with shields hardened against standard electromagnetic attacks. Their systems were designed to withstand pulse weapons from equivalent technological civilizations. Standard protocol assumed any EMP assault would originate from military platforms with predictable signatures. The defenses could handle localized bursts from orbital weapons or ground-based installations. Humanity's response followed no conventional military doctrine. Instead of centralized military strikes, they deployed coordinated EMP bursts across multiple orbital planes simultaneously. The attacks originated from hundreds of civilian satellites and ground stations. Power grid networks, communication towers, and industrial complexes all became temporary pulse generators. The electromagnetic waves hit Graxian sensors with unexpected intensity. Shield systems designed for military-grade pulses couldn't handle this distributed assault. Sensor networks experienced cascading failures across all monitoring frequencies. Targeting systems lost track of orbital objects. Communication arrays suffered signal degradation from the electromagnetic interference. The timing precision revealed advanced understanding of wave physics. Pulses arrived in overlapping sequences that maximized disruption while minimizing self-damage. Human infrastructure had apparently been designed with EMP resilience in mind. Critical systems went offline milliseconds before pulse impact, then reactivated immediately afterward. This coordination suggested extensive preparation and drilling. Humanity's distributed energy grid provided the perfect delivery platform. High-voltage transmission lines acted as massive antenna arrays. Power plants synchronized shutdowns to create precisely timed electromagnetic surges. The entire planetary energy network became a weapon system the Graxians hadn't accounted for in their threat assessment. This EMP strategy revealed unexpected electromagnetic warfare capabilities. The pulses contained complex modulation patterns that bypassed standard shielding protocols. Some frequencies specifically targeted Graxian sensor harmonics, rather than using broad-spectrum attacks. This indicated detailed knowledge of invasion fleet systems that intelligence reports claimed were secure. Graxian Command watched their displays flicker and stabilize in irregular patterns. Damage control teams reported system resets across multiple vessels. The attacks weren't powerful enough to cause permanent damage, but created constant operational interruptions. Sensor gaps appeared at critical moments during orbital maneuvers. The resolution became increasingly clear. Humanity had been preparing for electromagnetic warfare scenarios. Their civilian infrastructure contained hidden defensive capabilities. The distributed nature of the attacks made countermeasures impossible without destroying entire energy networks. This would violate multiple interstellar conventions regarding civilian target protection. Graxian technicians analyzed the pulse patterns with growing concern. The electromagnetic signatures matched theoretical models they'd considered too advanced for human technology. The precision timing required global coordination capabilities their intelligence reports had dismissed as impossible. Every pulse sequence revealed another layer of preparation they'd completely missed. Their technological superiority assumption began crumbling under this electromagnetic assault. Standard invasion doctrine assumed they'd face localized military resistance with predictable capabilities. Instead, they encountered planetary-scale coordination using civilian infrastructure as weapons. The EMP attacks demonstrated innovation they hadn't expected from a supposedly primitive species. Command staff began revising their threat assessment in real time. The EMP response indicated deeper strategic preparation than any previous conquered world. Humanity hadn't just developed technology, they'd developed entirely new ways of using it. Their distributed warfare approach created problems Graxian tactical systems weren't designed to solve. The electromagnetic pulses continued in carefully timed sequences. Each wave caused minor system disruptions that accumulated into major operational challenges. Navigation computers required constant recalibration. Communication systems experienced intermittent failures. The fleet began losing its technological edge to a civilization that had turned its infrastructure into a weapon. Graxian electronic warfare targeted Earth's digital communication networks with practiced efficiency. Their systems jammed military frequencies and disrupted civilian communications. Standard doctrine assumed this would cripple command and control capabilities. They expected confusion and disorganization to follow digital network collapse. Humanity transitioned to non-digital communication methods with seamless precision. Military units adopted hand signals and flag systems for tactical coordination. Runners carried messages between command posts using established courier protocols. The shift happened so quickly it suggested pre-existing preparation and training. Civilian networks employed musical instruments and visual signaling systems. Church bells rang specific patterns to indicate approaching threats. Lighthouse beacons flashed coded messages along coastlines. Fireworks displays conveyed information across entire cities. These methods created a communication web immune to electronic countermeasures. Trained animals carried messages across electronic dead zones. Homing pigeons delivered tactical information between units. Dogs transported medical supplies with location coordinates. Even domesticated cats became couriers in urban environments. These biological messengers operated where technology failed. This analog network provided reliable communication despite Graxian interference. The low-technology methods bypassed all electronic warfare systems. Signals couldn't be jammed because they used no radio frequencies. Messages couldn't be intercepted because they required physical capture. The transition revealed extensive preparation for this exact scenario. Military units had practiced analog communication drills for years. Civilian organizations maintained traditional signaling methods as backup systems. Animal training programs operated in multiple countries as contingency plans. Graxian electronic warfare specialists found themselves completely ineffective. Their advanced jamming equipment had no target without digital transmissions. Signal intelligence teams couldn't intercept drum patterns or flag signals. The technological superiority they relied upon became irrelevant. Command staff watched their displays with growing frustration. Their sensors showed human forces coordinating effectively despite communication blackouts. Military movements proceeded with precision that should require digital networks. Civilian responses to threats occurred with organized efficiency. This analog resilience created strategic problems for invasion planning. Standard occupation procedures required control of communication systems. The Graxians had no method to monitor or disrupt these primitive techniques. Their entire electronic warfare doctrine assumed technological opponents. The resolution became increasingly clear. Humanity could fight effectively without advanced technology. Their military training emphasized skills beyond digital dependency. Civilian populations maintained knowledge of traditional communication methods. This cultural resilience provided tactical advantages they hadn't anticipated. Graxian forces faced an enemy that could operate completely offline. Their advanced systems were designed against technological civilizations. The assumption that digital disruption meant command collapse proved completely wrong. Human forces demonstrated they could coordinate through multiple redundant systems. This analog capability forced complete reassessment of invasion strategy. Standard electronic warfare tactics had zero effect on human operations. The Graxians needed to develop entirely new countermeasures for primitive communication methods. Their technological advantage narrowed to specific weapon systems rather than overall capability. The analog network continued operating throughout the electronic warfare campaign. Message delivery times actually improved as runners established optimized routes. Animal couriers developed reliable paths through contested territory. Human coordination capabilities remained intact despite all technological disruption efforts. The unified Earth response shattered Graxian confidence at the command level. Dr. Eleanor Patel's transmission arrived on all fleet channels simultaneously. Her message carried the authority of the Emergency Response Coalition with calm precision. She spoke with the measured tone of an academic presenting research findings, rather than a threatened representative. Her analysis began with historical perspective, mixed with tactical warning. She revealed humanity's centuries of preparation for extraterrestrial contact scenarios. Civil defense drills had been conducted globally for generations. Military exercises included invasion response protocols. Scientific communities developed contingency plans for first contact situations. The message demonstrated deep understanding of conflict psychology. She explained how their intimidation tactics had been anticipated and countered. The demonstration strike provided valuable intelligence rather than causing fear. The electronic warfare measures triggered prepared analog responses. Every Graxian action had been met with planned counteractions. Her tone mixed defiance with clinical analysis of their mistakes. She specifically referenced their intelligence failures regarding human resilience. The assessment of technological inferiority missed cultural preparation. The assumption of disunity ignored coordinated training. The psychological models failed to account for adaptive response patterns. Dr. Patel's delivery contained no emotional appeals or desperate negotiations. She presented facts about their miscalculations with academic detachment. The communication outlined how each aspect of their invasion plan had been anticipated. From orbital strategies to ground assault protocols, humanity had prepared countermeasures. The message ended with sarcastic gratitude for their one-day consideration period. She noted how the time frame had allowed complete global mobilization. The ultimatum's deadline became humanity's preparation timeline. This ironic twist highlighted their strategic miscalculation. This was the moment Graxian Command realized their fundamental error. They weren't facing primitive fear but prepared analytical resistance. The calm certainty in Dr. Patel's voice conveyed more threat than any military transmission. Her academic dissection of their failures undermined command confidence. Officers watched the transmission with growing unease. The strategic picture shifted from certain victory to uncertain conflict. Their psychological warfare had been turned against them. The demonstration of force had become a demonstration of limitation. Dr. Patel's message revealed the depth of human preparation. Every contingency had been planned for and drilled. The response coordination indicated years of hidden preparation. Their intelligence assessment had completely missed this strategic readiness. The communications timing and delivery demonstrated operational security. It arrived after initial countermeasures had been deployed. The message served as explanation rather than negotiation. This indicated confidence in their defensive position. Graxian Command began recalculating their invasion timeline. The expected swift victory now appeared impossible. The psychological advantage had shifted to the defenders. Their certainty about human response patterns evaporated. This single transmission changed the strategic calculus completely. The assumption of technological and psychological superiority collapsed. They faced an opponent who understood conflict better than they understood humanity. The invasion plan required complete revision against this prepared resistance. Dr. Patel's final words lingered in the command center. The sarcastic thanks for their consideration period echoed their miscalculation. The entire operation now appeared arrogant rather than assured. Confidence gave way to doubt as officers reassessed their position. The distinction between military and civilian dissolved within hours of ground engagement. Graxian doctrine expected to fight organized military forces with clear uniforms and command structures. Their tactical planning assumed conventional warfare against identifiable combat units. Standard occupation procedures targeted military infrastructure while protecting civilian populations. They encountered integrated civilian-military resistance networks that defied categorization. Homeowners booby-trapped residences using household materials with deadly efficiency. Pressure cookers became explosive devices. Cleaning chemicals mixed into corrosive weapons. Garden tools transformed into close combat implements. Every residence became a potential defensive position. Farmers adapted agricultural equipment into defensive weapons across rural regions. Combine harvesters modified into mobile barriers with cutting attachments. Irrigation systems repurposed to deliver disabling chemicals. Fertilizer spreaders converted to scatter area denial devices. The agricultural landscape became a terrain of concealed threats. Engineers retrofitted industrial tools into combat applications with startling speed. Construction cranes became sniper platforms with elevated firing positions. Manufacturing robots reprogrammed for defensive operations. Warehouse forklifts modified into armored personnel carriers. Industrial facilities converted into fortified strongpoints. This distributed resistance made occupation mathematically impossible. Standard garrison ratios assumed 1 soldier per 50 civilians for pacification. The complete integration of civilian resistance changed the equation to 1 soldier per armed defender. Graxian logistics couldn't support the troop numbers required for effective control. Every city block became its own defensive fortress with autonomous command structures. Neighborhood watch programs organized coordinated defense plans. Local businesses established supply networks for resistance fighters. Community centers became emergency medical stations and communication hubs. The resolution became starkly clear within hours of ground deployment. The Graxians faced not an army but an entire armed population. Their casualty projections exceeded worst-case scenarios immediately. Standard pacification measures proved completely ineffective against this decentralized resistance. Graxian patrols found themselves surrounded in urban environments they supposedly controlled. Snipers fired from residential windows, then disappeared into civilian populations. Ambushes occurred from seemingly peaceful neighborhoods. The invaders couldn't distinguish combatants from non-combatants. This civilian integration created psychological warfare advantages beyond tactical considerations. Graxian soldiers hesitated to engage potential non-combatants, creating operational delays. Rules of engagement became increasingly restrictive as civilian resistance intensified. Morale suffered as traditional combat norms dissolved. The mathematical reality of the situation became undeniable. Initial casualty projections assumed military-on-military engagements with predictable loss ratios. The integrated resistance produced casualty rates 10 times higher than worst-case estimates. Medical facilities overflowed with wounded from unconventional attacks. Graxian Command authorized retreat from ground operations within the first operational day. They recognized conventional warfare was impossible against this opponent. The invasion plan contained no contingency for fighting an entire armed population. Their technological superiority meant little in house-to-house combat against determined defenders. This strategic withdrawal represented the first time Graxian forces had abandoned a planetary invasion. The doctrine of overwhelming force had met its match in distributed resistance. Their assumption of civilian passivity proved catastrophically wrong. The invasion timetable collapsed under the weight of unsustainable casualties. The lesson became permanently etched in military doctrine. Technological superiority cannot overcome determined population-wide resistance. The distinction between civilian and military becomes irrelevant when entire civilizations mobilize for defense. This fundamental miscalculation forced complete reassessment of invasion protocols. Graxian technology began working against them with brutal efficiency. Their standard doctrine assumed technological capture was impossible against primitive species. Weapon systems contained self-destruct mechanisms and anti-tampering protocols. These security measures had never failed across 17 planetary conquests. Human forces captured and analyzed Graxian weapons within hours of ground contact. Special operations teams specifically targeted technology recovery missions behind enemy lines. They prioritized intact plasma rifles, communication devices, and personal shielding units. Extraction teams worked under fire to secure these technological prizes. Engineers reverse-engineered systems using global collaborative networks. Research facilities across multiple continents shared data in real time. University laboratories analyzed materials science while military workshops studied mechanical design. The collective brainpower of humanity focused on understanding alien technology. The first human-modified Graxian weapons were deployed within 6 hours of capture. Field units mounted plasma rifles on existing vehicle platforms. Engineers bypassed biometric safeties with simple mechanical overrides. Shield generators were repurposed for area defense instead of personal protection. This technological adaptation happened at unprecedented speed. Modification teams worked while combat continued around them. Field repairs incorporated captured components into existing systems. The learning curve moved from theoretical understanding to practical application in minutes rather than days. Graxian prisoners reported seeing their own technology used against them. Patrol units encountered human forces wielding modified plasma weapons. Defensive positions featured captured shield generators protecting makeshift bunkers. Communication intercepts revealed humans using Graxian frequencies for coordination. The technological gap closed faster than doctrine accounted for. Standard invasion timelines allowed weeks for technological adaptation by primitive species. Humanity achieved in hours what should have taken months. Their innovative capacity exceeded all predictive models and simulation parameters. Graxian Command watched tactical reports with growing alarm. Their technological advantage was eroding by the hour. Weapons they considered secure were being turned against their own forces. Security systems designed for advanced civilizations proved ineffective against human ingenuity. This reverse engineering effort revealed fundamental flaws in Graxian design philosophy. Their technology prioritized sophistication over resilience. Human engineers found simple workarounds for complex security measures. The assumption of technological superiority collapsed under practical testing. Field modifications demonstrated human adaptability under pressure. Soldiers in combat conditions made functional changes to captured equipment. These battlefield innovations were immediately shared across global networks. The collective learning process accelerated with each successful modification. Graxian logistics suffered from this technological reversal. Supply lines now had to account for their own weapons being used against them. Armor designed to withstand human weapons faced plasma rifles in enemy hands. The entire balance of force calculations required revision. The resolution became increasingly clear as captured technology spread through human forces. What began as isolated incidents became systematic technological appropriation. Graxian security protocols proved inadequate against determined reverse engineering. Their assumption of technological invincibility became their greatest vulnerability. Humanity's innovative capacity revealed itself through crisis-driven adaptation. The global collaboration network functioned with efficiency. Their intelligence reports had dismissed as impossible. Technological barriers that should have taken years to overcome fell in hours. This demonstrated preparedness they hadn't anticipated in their target assessment. The technological landscape of the conflict shifted fundamentally. No longer were the Graxians facing technologically inferior opponents. They were fighting an enemy that could capture, understand, and improve their own weapon systems. This realization changed strategic calculations at the highest command levels. Earth's civilian space infrastructure transformed into an impromptu defense network within hours. Graxian fleet security focused exclusively on military space assets according to standard doctrine. Their targeting solutions prioritized orbital weapons platforms and military satellites, while ignoring commercial systems. This assessment contained a critical oversight regarding human adaptability under pressure. Civilian space launch providers converted rockets into weapons platforms with startling speed. Orbital launch facilities became missile silos through rapid modification procedures. Engineers removed payload fairings and installed kinetic impactors instead of satellites. Guidance systems were reprogrammed for interception trajectories rather than orbital insertion. The conversion process took hours instead of the weeks Graxian intelligence had estimated. The sheer volume of launches created overwhelming pressure on point defense systems. Dozens of rockets ascended simultaneously from multiple continents. Launch schedules were coordinated through global networks that remained operational despite electronic warfare efforts. The crude but numerous weapons achieved effective area denial through saturation tactics. Commercial satellite constellations were weaponized for reconnaissance purposes. Earth observation satellites redirected their sensors toward Graxian fleet movements. Communication satellites relayed targeting data between launch facilities. Navigation satellites provided precision tracking for intercept courses. These civilian systems created a comprehensive surveillance network. The line between civilian and military space assets disappeared completely. What began as distinct categories merged into integrated defense systems. University satellite projects contributed sensor data alongside military intelligence. Commercial communication networks distributed firing solutions. The entire orbital environment became hostile territory. Graxian point defense systems experienced critical overload conditions. They were designed to handle limited missile volleys from identifiable military sources. The distributed nature of the rocket launches confused targeting priorities. Systems couldn't distinguish between actual threats and decoy missions. This improvisation achieved space denial through distributed systems. The Graxians maintained technological superiority, but faced quantitative overwhelm. Their vessels could destroy individual rockets efficiently, but couldn't stop the constant barrage. Each interception required energy expenditure that accumulated over time. Orbital superiority became increasingly costly to maintain. Point defense systems experienced heat buildup from continuous operation. Weapon recharge cycles created vulnerable windows between engagements. The constant alert status drained crew efficiency and mechanical reliability. The rocket launches followed unpredictable patterns that defied standard countermeasures. Some carried simple kinetic impactors while others contained electronic warfare payloads. Decoy rockets masked the trajectories of actual threats. The variety of approaches prevented development of consistent defense protocols. Graxian Command watched their resource expenditure rates with growing concern. Fuel consumption for maneuver thrusters exceeded projections by 400%. Point defense weapon ammunition reserves dropped to critical levels. Crew fatigue became a significant factor in defense effectiveness. This orbital defense strategy demonstrated human innovative capacity under crisis conditions. The rapid conversion of civilian infrastructure showed pre-existing contingency planning. The coordination between multiple launch providers indicated hidden preparedness measures. Their ability to create effective space denial without dedicated military systems revealed strategic depth. The resolution became clear as launch rates continued increasing. Graxian orbital superiority required constant expenditure of limited resources. Each hour of space dominance cost more than projected for the entire invasion. The mathematical advantage shifted toward the defenders through sheer persistence. Earth achieved space denial not through technological equality but through distributed persistence. The Graxians could destroy rockets faster than humans could build them, but not faster than they could launch them. This fundamental calculation changed the orbital battle from certain victory to unsustainable conflict. The ground campaign revealed the depth of Graxian miscalculation within the first hour of deployment. Their landing forces expected limited resistance from organized military units wearing identifiable uniforms. Standard doctrine called for rapid seizure of key infrastructure, followed by pacification operations. The playbook had worked perfectly on 17 previous worlds with predictable military hierarchies. Instead, they encountered house-to-house resistance from integrated civilian forces. Homeowners fired from windows using hunting rifles modified for armor penetration. Shopkeepers dropped improvised explosives from upper stories. Office workers coordinated ambushes using hand signals and whistle codes. The urban environment became a three-dimensional battlefield. Local knowledge gave defenders overwhelming tactical advantage. Residents knew every alleyway, sewer access point, and building layout. They created kill zones where Graxian armor couldn't maneuver. Ambushes occurred from directions their tactical maps didn't account for. The invaders fought in unfamiliar terrain against opponents who knew every centimeter. Improvised weapons proved surprisingly effective in close combat environments. Molotov cocktails disabled sensor arrays on combat armor. Industrial chemicals corroded joint seals on environmental suits. Construction equipment modified into armor-piercing weapons penetrated light vehicle plating. The technological gap narrowed significantly at street level. Casualty rates exceeded worst-case scenario projections immediately. Medical stations overflowed with wounded from unconventional attacks. Standard triage protocols couldn't handle the volume of injuries. The invasion force lost combat effectiveness faster than reinforcement capabilities. Landing zones became untenable within hours of establishment. What began as secure perimeters quickly became surrounded positions. Supply lines were cut by mobile resistance teams. Extraction routes were blocked with cleverly placed obstacles. The beachheads turned into traps rather than staging areas. The invasion force found itself surrounded on all fronts despite nominal control of territory. Their sensors showed enemy movements from every direction simultaneously. Command posts reported attacks from underground tunnels and elevated positions. The three-dimensional nature of urban combat neutralized their technological advantages. Graxian Command watched casualty reports with growing alarm. The numbers already exceeded total losses from 3 previous planetary conquests combined. Reinforcement schedules couldn't keep pace with attrition rates. The mathematical reality of the situation became undeniable. Standard occupation ratios assumed 1 soldier per 50 civilians for effective control. The complete integration of civilian resistance changed the equation to 1 soldier per armed defender. Their logistics couldn't support the troop numbers required for pacification. The resolution came through cold mathematical calculation. Continued ground operations would result in complete force depletion within 72 hours. The invasion timetable had collapsed under unsustainable casualty rates. Withdrawal became the only militarily sound option. Graxian Command authorized full retreat from ground operations. Extraction protocols were activated under continuous fire. The decision represented the first time in Imperial history that ground forces had been withdrawn from a planetary invasion. Their assumption of military superiority had been shattered by practical experience. They recognized conventional warfare was impossible against this opponent. The distinction between civilian and military had dissolved into universal resistance. Their technological advantage meant little in close urban combat against determined defenders. The entire invasion doctrine required fundamental re-examination based on this failure. The withdrawal operation itself, became a tactical nightmare. Extraction craft faced constant ground fire during approach and departure. Rescue missions turned into additional casualty events. The retreat cost more resources than the initial landing operations. This final lesson underscored the completeness of their miscalculation. Graxian science teams conducted standard biological analysis as part of post-engagement assessment. They expected to find predictable primate DNA with minor evolutionary variations. Standard protocol called for cataloging potential pathogens and identifying biological weaknesses. The examination followed established procedures that had never revealed surprises on previous worlds. Human DNA contained artificial markers approximately 20,000 years old. The genetic modifications matched Graxian ancient engineering patterns perfectly. The markers followed precise insertion sequences used in their own historical enhancement programs. This wasn't random mutation, but deliberate genetic engineering using their own techniques. This discovery suggested humanity might be their own abandoned weapons project. The genetic signature indicated classic warrior caste enhancement protocols. The modifications targeted cognitive function, aggression thresholds, and adaptive response mechanisms. These were standard patterns for creating military assets during their expansion era. The cognitive enhancements explained humanity's unpredictable resilience under pressure. The stress of invasion activated dormant genetic programming. This triggered intuitive leaps in science and engineering that allowed rapid technological adaptation. Their ability to reverse engineer weapons and develop countermeasures made sudden sense. They had awakened their own hibernating creation. The genetic markers were designed to activate when reaching certain developmental thresholds. The invasion provided the precise stress conditions the programming required. Humanity's transformation from primitive species to formidable opponent followed predicted activation patterns. This revelation fundamentally changed the conflict's nature. What began as routine conquest became something entirely different. They weren't subduing a primitive species but fighting their own genetic legacy. The invasion shifted from external conquest to internal conflict. The Graxians realized they were fighting their own creation. The weapons they faced were products of their own ancient science. The resilience they encountered was programmed by their own geneticists. The adaptation capabilities were features they themselves had designed. This genetic connection explained previously inexplicable human behaviors. The rapid technological advancement followed predicted enhancement patterns. The unified resistance matched warrior caste response protocols. Even the cultural diversity reflected classic destabilization design principles. The invasion became something closer to civil war. They were engaging not aliens but genetic cousins. The conflict carried echoes of their own historical internal struggles. The warrior spirit they faced was their own engineering reflected back at them. This discovery forced immediate reassessment of strategic objectives. Standard conquest protocols didn't apply to what was essentially their own species. The ethical implications of destroying their own creation became unavoidable. The military operation took on philosophical dimensions. Genetic analysis teams presented their findings to command staff with unprecedented urgency. The markers showed clear Graxian origin beyond any doubt. The engineering patterns matched their historical records perfectly. The timeline corresponded with their own period of maximum expansion. This revelation created strategic paralysis at the command level. Continued aggression felt like attacking their own history. Withdrawal seemed like abandoning their greatest creation. The mathematical certainty of conquest gave way to philosophical uncertainty. The resolution became clear through genetic analysis. They weren't facing primitive fear but engineered response. The chaos wasn't disorganization but designed adaptability. The resistance wasn't spontaneous but programmed. This genetic connection changed the fundamental equation of conflict. The technological gap wasn't accidental but intentional. The adaptation speed wasn't surprising but expected. The entire invasion narrative shifted from conquest to reunion. Command staff reviewed the genetic evidence with growing realization. Every human capability they'd found inexplicable now had clear explanation. The cognitive enhancements, the adaptive capacity, the relentless innovation, all were features they'd designed themselves. The invasion had become the ultimate test of their own engineering. Graxian Command conducted continuous cost-benefit analysis as the engagement progressed. The strategic situation became mathematically untenable within hours of ground operations. Casualty rates exceeded worst-case projections by 400%. Resource expenditure reached unsustainable levels across all fleet systems. The strategic outlook shifted from certain victory to probable defeat. Humanity's adaptive capacity exceeded all available response options. Their rapid technological innovation closed capability gaps faster than doctrine accounted for. Reverse-engineered weapons appeared on the battlefield within hours of capture. Civilian infrastructure converted into defensive systems with alarming efficiency. Continued engagement risked catastrophic fleet losses without achieving objectives. The DNA revelation changed the strategic calculation fundamentally. Genetic analysis confirmed humanity might be their own abandoned creation. This transformed the conflict from external conquest to internal confrontation. They weren't subduing primitive aliens but fighting their own genetic offspring. The ethical implications made continued aggression increasingly problematic. The resolution became clear through tactical analysis. Combined forces could achieve what separate armies could not. Shared technology created capabilities beyond individual development. Mutual defense provided strategic depth against overwhelming opposition. The alliance offered actual survival, where isolation promised certain destruction. Graxian command staff reviewed the proposal with new perspective. Their assessment shifted from invasion costs to survival probabilities. The numbers clearly favored cooperation, despite cultural discomfort. The ancient threat's capabilities made resistance impossible without allies. Humanity's coalition represented their only viable defense option. This moment marked the end of imperial expansion doctrine. The galactic landscape required new approaches to species interaction. Conquest became counterproductive when facing existential threats. Cooperation offered better survival odds than domination. Their entire civilization faced necessary evolution. The diplomatic offer forced confrontation with their own limitations. They couldn't defeat the ancient threat alone despite technological superiority. Humanity's coalition building demonstrated smarter strategic thinking. Their adaptability proved more valuable than raw firepower. The choice became adaptation or extinction. Captain Ward's transmission ended with invitation to emergency summit. The coalition needed Graxian technology and military experience. Their participation could tip the balance against the ancient threat. The offer recognized their value while acknowledging changed circumstances. The ball remained in their court for final decision. The pragmatic path forward became clear after brutal assessment. Graxian Command evaluated the alliance proposal with cold strategic logic. Every calculated analysis favored cooperation over continued conflict. The numbers showed mutual extinction as the only alternative. Their computers processed scenarios and probabilities with mechanical precision. Alliance offered 73% survival odds versus 9% through isolation. The math was unambiguous despite cultural resistance. Humanity's demonstrated capabilities made them valuable allies beyond dispute. Their rapid technological adaptation during combat exceeded all predictive models. Reverse engineering achievements showed innovative capacity Graxian science lacked. Their distributed defense systems revealed organizational skills Imperial forces couldn't match. These weren't primitive creatures, but formidable potential partners. The shared genetic heritage suggested natural compatibility for combined operations. DNA analysis confirmed identical cognitive enhancement patterns. Warrior caste markers indicated designed interoperability from their own ancient programs. This biological connection provided foundation for tactical coordination. Their forces could integrate with minimal training adjustments. The ancient threat required combined resources to confront effectively. Singular civilizations stood no chance against this enemy's capabilities. Historical records showed 17 extinct species facing this threat alone. Coalition defense offered the only documented success patterns. Their survival mathematics demanded shared strength. Their choice distilled to becoming allies or facing mutual extinction. Continued hostility meant certain destruction when the ancient enemy arrived. Alliance provided fighting chance through combined technology and intelligence. The decision represented complete abandonment of conquest-based identity. Their imperial doctrine had to evolve or face oblivion. Commander Zelith reviewed the final assessment with professional detachment. The data left no room for debate or delay. He agreed to present the proposal to the High Council with full endorsement. His recommendation included immediate technology exchange protocols. The invasion failure became foundation for unprecedented cooperation. The council chambers held tense silence during his presentation. Military leaders watched strategic displays showing alliance advantages. Scientific teams presented genetic compatibility evidence. Diplomatic staff outlined coalition integration procedures. Every department head confirmed the necessity of this shift. The resolution passed with minimal opposition after thorough examination. Dissenting voices conceded to mathematical certainty. Survival outweighed tradition when faced with extinction timelines. The decision mandated complete doctrinal revision across all military branches. Their civilization would never again approach conquest with same arrogance. Implementation protocols activated within hours of council approval. Communication channels reopened with human leadership under new parameters. Technology transfer teams began simultaneous data exchange. Military exercises planned for coordinated defense drills. The transition from enemies to allies proceeded with efficient precision. This alliance formation represented more than political agreement. It marked evolutionary step for both civilizations. The Graxians gained adaptive capacity while humans accessed advanced technology. Both species became stronger through combination than separation. The invasion attempt had accidentally created perfect partnership conditions. The failed conquest became historical turning point rather than military defeat. What began as arrogant expansion attempt ended as necessary evolution. Their survival now depended on embracing the very diversity they'd tried to eliminate. The galactic balance shifted from domination to cooperation through forced reassessment. Zeleth watched the first joint operations planning session with professional interest. Human and Graxian officers worked together with surprising efficiency. Their genetic compatibility enabled intuitive understanding of tactical concepts. The ancient engineering proved more effective than anyone anticipated. This partnership might actually work against the coming threat. The alliance implications extended far beyond two species. This partnership represented more than military cooperation against a common threat. It signaled a fundamental shift in galactic political structures. Traditional imperial power models faced complete reconsideration. The Graxian Empire had operated through conquest for generations. Their entire civilization now faced adaptation to unfamiliar diplomatic methods. Humanity's approach to diplomacy differed radically from Graxian traditions. They emphasized cooperation over domination. Knowledge sharing replaced information control. Mutual defense supplanted unilateral security. This model threatened established power structures across known space. Other imperial systems watched this development with deep concern. The balance of galactic power began shifting toward collaborative models. The Graxians confronted complete political environment change. Their technological evolution accelerated through contact with human innovation. Reverse engineering became two-way exchange rather than one-way appropriation. Cultural adaptation proceeded faster than their social systems could comfortably handle. Traditional hierarchies faced pressure from more flexible human organizational methods. This alliance forced reconsideration of their entire civilization's direction. Military priorities shifted from conquest to collective security. Economic models incorporated shared resource management. Scientific research embraced open collaboration protocols. The changes reached into every aspect of their society. Their identity transformed from solitary empire to coalition partner. Both species recognized their survival depended on this cooperation. The ancient threat required combined capabilities, neither possessed alone. Human adaptability complemented Graxian technological advancement. Their genetic connection provided natural foundation for integration. The partnership created strengths neither civilization could achieve independently. The failed invasion became catalyst for galactic transformation. What began as arrogant conquest attempt ended as necessary evolution. The Graxians' humiliation became their salvation. Humanity's resilience created opportunity, rather than simply achieving survival. Both species emerged stronger through forced cooperation. This new galactic order challenged centuries of established politics. Imperial systems based on domination faced obsolescence. Collaborative models demonstrated greater effectiveness against existential threats. The coalition approach provided resilience through diversity. Multiple species working together created capabilities beyond any single empire. The Graxian adaptation process revealed unexpected benefits. Their technological advancement accelerated through human interaction. Military tactics improved with adaptive thinking incorporated. Scientific research gained new perspectives from different approaches. Their civilization became more resilient through diversity. Humanity's diplomatic methods spread through galactic networks. Other species began adopting cooperative approaches. The coalition model expanded beyond initial members. This created a shifting balance of power away from traditional empires. Galactic politics entered a period of rapid transformation. The resolution became clear through continued cooperation. Both species recognized their futures were interconnected. The alliance provided security against the ancient threat. It also created opportunities for mutual advancement. Their combined capabilities exceeded what either could achieve separately. This transformation extended beyond military considerations. Cultural exchange created new artistic and scientific movements. Economic systems developed more efficient resource distribution. Social structures evolved to accommodate diverse perspectives. The galactic community became richer through this integration. The failed invasion ultimately served both species' interests. It forced necessary evolution that might otherwise have taken centuries. The shock of defeat created opportunity for growth. The humiliation of failure became foundation for greater success. Both civilizations advanced further through cooperation than they ever could through conflict. This new galactic order represented practical necessity rather than idealistic choice. Survival required adaptation to new political realities. The ancient threat made cooperation essential rather than optional. Their alliance became model for other species facing similar challenges. The transformation spread across known space, creating a more resilient galactic community. The Graxian invasion failed because they misunderstood human nature entirely. They assessed our technology but overlooked our culture, preparation, and resilience. Earth's victory emerged from three unexpected strengths. Diversity became our armor, adaptation our weapon, and unity our strategy. Their sensors saw fractured languages but missed shared purpose. Their weapons met not just soldiers but entire populations. Their doctrine assumed panic would follow demonstration strikes, but we analyzed and innovated instead. They judged our civilization by its surface divisions, never recognizing the deeper unity that emerges only when existence itself is threatened. Command staff reviewed the situation with cold precision. Ground forces faced complete depletion within 72 hours. Orbital superiority required unsustainable resource expenditure. Electronic warfare measures proved completely ineffective. The invasion timetable had collapsed under coordinated resistance. Retreat became the only militarily sound option. The order came to disengage and withdraw from Earth space. Extraction protocols activated under continuous fire from human forces. The withdrawal operation itself became a costly tactical exercise. Landing craft suffered significant losses during retrieval operations. The Universal Conquest Doctrine had suffered its first defeat. 17 successful planetary subjugations meant nothing against this opponent. Their mathematical certainty of victory evaporated under practical testing. The assumption of technological superiority proved inadequate against human innovation. Commander Verax recognized the need for strategic reassessment. His initial confidence gave way to professional respect for human capabilities. The recommendation for immediate withdrawal came with stark analysis of alternative outcomes. Continued engagement would result in fleet destruction rather than planetary conquest. The retreat decision reflected changing psychological factors. Confidence bordering on arrogance was replaced by sober calculation. Fear of complete operational failure overcame imperial pride. The realization they were losing to their own creation added moral complexity to military necessity. This withdrawal represented more than tactical retreat. It marked the end of Graxian military invincibility. Their doctrine required fundamental revision based on human resistance. The assumption that technological superiority guaranteed victory proved false. The order to disengage moved through command channels with reluctant efficiency. Ship captains acknowledged instructions with professional discipline despite personal disappointment. Formation changes began as vessels repositioned for withdrawal. The invasion force transitioned from attack posture to retreat configuration. Human forces continued pressure during the disengagement phase. Their attacks demonstrated understanding of withdrawal vulnerabilities. The extraction became a fighting retreat rather than orderly departure. This final resistance underscored the completeness of their defensive preparation. The retreat from Earth space became a permanent lesson in military doctrine. Technological superiority cannot overcome determined resistance supported by cultural unity. The distinction between civilian and military becomes irrelevant when entire populations mobilize. Adaptive capacity and innovative thinking can defeat overwhelming force. The Graxian fleet expected pursuit operations or additional attacks during their retreat. Standard doctrine predicted the defeated would press their advantage. Their tactical displays showed multiple possible assault vectors from orbital defense systems. Point defense weapons remained active against anticipated missile volleys. Command staff prepared for fighting withdrawal under constant pressure. Instead, a single diplomatic ship approached under peaceful flag protocols. The vessel followed precise approach vectors indicating non-hostile intent. Its transponder broadcast universal diplomatic codes that even Graxian systems recognized. The ship moved with deliberate slowness through defensive perimeters. Weapon systems tracked its progress but received no firing authorization. Captain Amara Ward represented the Emergency Response Coalition with calm authority. Her transmission opened with flawless Graxian syntax and proper diplomatic forms. She presented a completely unexpected proposal that defied all conflict protocols. The message contained no demands or threats, only strategic analysis. She offered alliance instead of continued conflict. The proposal acknowledged their shared genetic heritage without accusation. It framed cooperation as strategically superior to continued hostility. This demonstrated humanity's capacity for strategic forgiveness that their doctrine hadn't anticipated. The offer included intelligence sharing and mutual defense agreements. The message specifically referenced the ancient threat that concerned both species. It presented alliance as the only logical response to external dangers. The proposal emphasized survival over conquest as strategic priority. This reframed the entire conflict from territorial dispute to existential cooperation. Graxian command staff listened with professional attention. Their initial suspicion gave way to analytical consideration. The strategic picture shifted from retreat assessment to opportunity evaluation. The alliance offer made mathematical sense despite emotional resistance. Captain Ward's delivery mixed tactical clarity with diplomatic precision. She outlined specific benefits of cooperation without minimizing past conflicts. The proposal included technology exchange and joint research initiatives. It presented a path forward that served both species' interests. This diplomatic overture represented more than peace offering. It demonstrated humanity's understanding of galactic-scale strategy. The proposal showed they'd been analyzing Graxian capabilities while defending against them. Their strategic thinking extended beyond planetary defense to interstellar politics. The resolution became increasingly clear through cold analysis. The Graxians faced a choice between extinction and evolution. Continued isolation meant facing ancient threats alone. Alliance offered survival through combined strength. Their entire conquest paradigm required fundamental re-examination. Command staff reviewed the proposal with professional detachment. The mathematical advantages of alliance outweighed continued conflict. The genetic connection provided natural foundation for cooperation. The external threat made cooperation strategically necessary. This moment represented more than diplomatic negotiation. It marked the potential end of imperial expansion doctrine. The offer forced consideration of entirely new political models. Their civilization faced evolutionary pressure beyond military conflict. Captain Ward's transmission ended with invitation to further discussion. The diplomatic ship maintained position without defensive posturing. The ball was in their court, as humans might say. The choice would define their species' future direction. The Graxian High Command began the assessment process. Strategic analysts calculated alliance benefits versus continued hostility. The numbers clearly favored cooperation despite cultural resistance. Their conquest-based identity faced its greatest challenge. Captain Ward's diplomatic transmission contained intelligence that changed everything. She presented confirmed data about a shared ancient enemy that threatened both species. This external force had driven the Graxians from their original homeworld generations earlier. Their historical records contained only fragmented accounts of that catastrophic event. The same threat now endangered multiple species across the galactic region. Humanity had already formed defensive alliances with other threatened civilizations. The emissary vessel served as physical proof of their galactic diplomatic progress. Its design incorporated technology from 3 different starfaring species. This demonstrated interstellar cooperation capabilities the Graxians hadn't imagined possible. The coalition represented a new model of galactic relations. This revelation reframed the conflict from territorial to existential. The invasion attempt became irrelevant against the larger threat. Both species faced potential extinction if they continued fighting separately. The ancient enemy's capabilities exceeded anything either civilization could handle alone. Cooperation became necessary for survival rather than optional for peace. The Graxians realized humanity offered more than cessation of hostilities. They presented a path to species survival against overwhelming odds. The alliance included access to combined intelligence and shared technology. This represented strategic advantage they couldn't achieve through conquest. Their perspective shifted from planetary domination to galactic preservation. The choice became starkly simple: join the coalition or face extinction alone. Their conquest doctrine offered no protection against this ancient threat. Isolation meant certain destruction when the enemy arrived. Alliance provided fighting chance through combined strength and shared knowledge. The mathematical certainty of defeat alone made cooperation logical. This strategic shift required complete psychological adjustment. Graxian identity had always centered on expansion and domination. The concept of equality with other species contradicted their core beliefs. Their entire civilization needed to reconsider its place in the galactic order. The ancient threat forced evolution of their fundamental worldview. Humanity's diplomatic achievement demonstrated unexpected sophistication. They'd built interstellar relationships while defending their homeworld. This multitasking capacity revealed organizational skills beyond Graxian capabilities. Their ability to coordinate multiple species suggested advanced political understanding. The coalition represented more than military alliance, it was cultural evolution.